Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People story. I've lived on my family's farm for as long as I can remember. My great-grandfather bought the land over a century ago and it's been passed down ever since. I love this place more than anything. The rolling fields, the big red barn, the animals IT quote S home. A few years back, a new neighbor moved in right next door. At first, Karen seemed nice enough. She waved politely whenever we saw each other, but it didn't take long for her true colors to show. The first sign of trouble happened about a month after Karen moved in. I was out baling hay when I noticed a four-wheeler zipping through my back pasture. I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured it was just some local kids messing around. But the next day I saw it again, and the day after that. It took me a week to finally catch the driver in the act. And wouldn't you know it, it was Karen. I marched right over to the fence and waved my arms. "Hey, you're on my property," I shouted. Karen spun her ATV around and rolled up next to me. "Oh, hi, neighbor," she said cheerfully, like she hadn't been trespassing at all. "I was just taking the scenic route home." I frowned. "The scenic route? This is my field. You can't just drive through here whenever you want." Karen laughed. "Don't be silly, I'm not hurting anything, just enjoying the countryside." And with that, she sped off, leaving me fuming in her dust. I hoped that would be the end of it, but sadly it was only the beginning. After that first confrontation, Karen started riding her ATV through my fields every single day. And I mean every day. Morning, noon, and night, she'd be out there kicking up dirt. She had zero regard for the damage she was causing. Huge ruts formed wherever she drove that four-wheeler. It totally wrecked one of my hayfields. Again and again I asked her to stop. I even put up no trespassing signs along the fence line, but Karen completely ignored them. If anything, I think my complaints just encouraged her to trespass more. One morning I'd had enough. I watched from my porch as Karen zoomed through the south pasture. That was the last straw. I jumped in my truck and followed her route along the dirt road that borders my property. I figured if I drove behind her slowly, she'd get annoyed and leave. But as soon as Karen noticed me, she slammed on the brakes. I stopped about 20 feet back from her ATV. "What do you think you're doing?" Karen shrieked at me. "Get off my property!" I shook my head in disbelief. "Your property? This is my land." Karen's face turned red with anger. "How dare you trespass on my road? I'm calling the sheriff." Before I could respond, she pulled out her cell phone and dialed 911. I sat there completely stunned while Karen launched into a huge sob story about how I'd chased her down the road and threatened her. Total nonsense. Soon enough, a deputy arrived. I tried to explain the situation calmly, but Karen kept screaming that I was harassing her. No matter what I said, she wouldn't back down. Finally, the deputy got fed up. He told Karen that the road was public access and that I had every right to drive there. Then he warned her to stop trespassing on my fields, or she'd face charges. Karen stormed off in a huff, leaving me with the deputy. He was really understanding and even gave me his card in case she caused more problems. I thanked him profusely before he left. For a few days after that, Karen stayed off my land. But sure enough, by the end of the week, she was back to her old tricks. Her reckless ATV driving infuriated me. But I knew if I confronted her again, she'd just call the law on me. I decided to try a different approach. I set up a video camera at the edge of my wheat field and left it recording all day. The very next morning, I caught Karen red-handed tearing up the field. Her ATV was unmistakable on the footage. Armed with video evidence, I marched over to Karen's house and pounded on the door. She answered in her bathrobe, coffee mug in hand. "What do you want?" she sneered. "I want you to stop trespassing on my farm," I said firmly. "Take a look." I held up my phone and showed her the video of her riding through my wheat. Karen's smug expression faded. She stammered excuses, but I shut her down. "Save it," I said. "You've left me no choice but to get law enforcement involved." Karen's face went pale. She begged me not to call the police. Said she'd never set foot on my property again if I promised not to press charges. I told her I'd think about it. In reality, I'd already made up my mind. First thing the next morning, I met with the county sheriff and showed him the video. He was furious. Said what Karen was doing was not just trespassing, but destruction of property too. The sheriff himself came and arrested Karen that same day. She was charged with criminal trespass and fined a hefty sum for the damages. But the best part was seeing her ATV get towed away. I tell you, watching that entitled woman sob as they hauled her four-wheeler onto the truck gave me immense satisfaction. Karen avoided me after that whole debacle. I think she was embarrassed about being exposed as the trespassing bully she was. I fixed up my fields and fortified the fence lines even more to keep her out for good. It just goes to show you can't let people walk all over you, even if they happen to be your neighbor. I stood up for my rights and my land. And in the end, justice was served. Karen finally paid the price for her reckless behavior. My farm is peaceful once again. The next one is a pro-revenge story. Some time back, I was hired by a company led by a CEO I had previously worked for elsewhere. He was a good friend, so when his newest company wasn't achieving sales, he headhunted me to join the new one. The company hadn't made a sale in 2 years. In the first year, the software product was in beta, so it wasn't ready to be sold. In the second year, they realized that using the tech staff to make high-end sales to C-level executives was the worst sales model one could conceptualize. In general, and there are exceptions, these two personality styles don't speak the same language. Tech people talk tech, while buyers talk benefits and how the potential product fulfills needs. I bridged the gap well by translating tech speak into natural conversational language so buyers could better understand how their needs would be filled. The job was a 1.5-hour drive one way from my home, so the CEO said I could work from home as long as I kept the sales management tool current, where you keep notes of each prospect's status, attended important meetings, and provided daily sales reports to the executive team. During the first month, I made the daily 3-hour commute because I needed to have solid, constant interaction with all the departments to rapidly form my sales strategy and develop a two-way confidence level with the section heads. Once I had a handle on things, I was ready to launch my sales plan. In the meantime, the CEO hired a VP of sales, whom I'll refer to as Idiot Boss, who started 4 days before I hit the ground running to get in front of buyers. She was a VP coming from the banking industry and had a long career in sales and marketing for financial products. I disliked her from the moment she arrived because she knew very little about tech, and I spent a lot of time trying to orient her. This wasn't ideal because I needed to work on my sales strategy. They brought her on board because of her strong experience in gaining financial investors. Nevertheless, I forged ahead, traveling to a target state and spending 19 days crisscrossing it. When I came back, I had 17 contracts from buyers totaling about $2 million in sales. My CEO was overjoyed. Fast forward 6 months, and now working from home, I'm excelling. Sales are strong, and the CEO is happy. Good things are happening. Idiot Boss has landed an investor willing to invest $6 million into the company, and they are coming into town for a discovery meeting. She asked me to drive up because they specifically want to meet the salesperson. Seconds before walking in the door for the big meeting, Idiot Boss pulls me aside and says she needs me to back her up on a lie she has told them. Basically, she doubled my sales numbers. I told her there was no way I was going to do that. She says the CEO has okayed the lie. We get to the part in the talk where the investor is looking over my inflated sales numbers on the prospectus, then directly asks me how many sales I'm making a month. Idiot Boss is behind him, waving her arms, but I was having none of it and answered truthfully. He looks askance at the document which has the false number listed while she's giving me the stink eye behind him. No one says a word. Dead silence. I ask to see the document, and fates have aligned, allowing me to solve the dilemma. I explain the first 2 numbers were transposed. They correlated well to my real sales versus inflated sales if you flip-flopped the first 2 digits. The potential investor is satisfied, and we move on. Switch gears. About a week later, I was meeting with the CIO in his office, and he referred to my big assets. I'm no shrinking violet, but it stunned me because it was so unexpected. That night, I was chatting with my BFF, who happens to be a lawyer, and told him about it in casual conversation. He said I should tell the CEO so he can address it. Thinking along smart business practices, I decide to tell Idiot Boss, to whom I directly report as proper protocol since we don't have an HR department yet. A side note. I also reported directly to the CIO as a boss since my role was a muddy mix of sales and tech. 2 days later, I check in with him, and the CEO still hadn't talked to the CIO because the investors were in town. I gently push him to get it done and casually mention my best friend, who happens to be a lawyer, was the one who urged me to tell him because any good CEO would want to know about it. I reiterate I'm not mad or upset. The only word he heard was lawyer. He went crazy that I was bringing a lawyer into the mix. Now, this guy was my good friend. We'd worked together at 2 companies for years. I calmed him down, or so I thought, explaining that I only wanted him to talk to the CIO. I also told him I hadn't brought a lawyer into it, that I had been innocently chatting with my BFF, who just happens to be a criminal defense attorney. He seemed okay, and we hung up. The next day, I'm working as usual, and I get a call from an attorney who explains the company has hired her regarding my sexual harassment claim. I'm flummoxed and adamantly told her that was not the case, that I had no claim against the company. She said otherwise. And that's when everything changed. Dramatically. The CEO was furious with me for bringing this on when investors were looking at us. His reaction set the tone which filtered down. The company began to retaliate against me. Idiot boss now made it her mission to make my life hell, forgetting to tell me about important meetings I was supposed to attend, freezing me out when I was in the office, telling me I could no longer even speak to the CIO, a problem since I'm selling a multi-million-dollar tech product needing his input, and I directly reported to him as my other boss, denying me a long-planned, approved vacation, basically anything she could devise to screw me over. She was gleefully working it. Coinciding with this was a serious health problem I developed, ultimately requiring surgery. My illness had no impact on my work as I was able to work from home, which made things easier on me health-wise. Idiot boss then decided that I needed to come to the office every day despite a 3-hour round-trip commute. Now I know you're thinking, why didn't I just leave? Get another job somewhere else? I needed the health insurance. There was no way to secure another job fast enough, and I had a complex surgery scheduled requiring 3 surgeons for my procedure. My doctor gave me a note for them which released me from having to make the daily commute so I could continue to work at home. As long as my work didn't suffer, they legally couldn't force me to commute, especially since working from home was a part of my employment contract from the outset. The night before my surgery, Idiot Boss calls to tell me they've canceled my health insurance. After hanging up with Idiot Boss, I collapsed on the floor in a faint. I was so sick and mentally exhausted from all the stress. The next morning, the CEO frantically calls asking to talk to me. My mom refuses to let him. I'm on official leave as of that morning, and we're heading to the hospital. CEO had told their lawyer about canceling my health insurance, and she chewed him a new one, telling him it was illegal. They immediately reinstated my insurance. In the 2 weeks I was out, my mom had found a lawyer for me as it was clear shenanigans were going on. I still needed them as an employer because I was in no shape to rigorously job hunt while recovering. Turns out all the nonsense they were doing to me is illegal. Companies aren't allowed to retaliate against employees when they report nefarious acts against them. I met with my new lawyer, who said I had an excellent claim for retaliation and took me on. He said I had to continue working there while he did his thing to stay within protocol while he filed the EEOC claim. Now it's time for me to return to work. The company had relocated, planned, during my absence, and Idiot Boss refused to tell me where, so I couldn't come back to work. The company lawyer told them they had to tell me, so Idiot Boss gives me wrong directions, making me late on day 1. I walk into the new office, and it looks like any other place except for one thing. There is a wide open area directly in front of the CEO's glass office with a single desk in the middle of it. Welcome to my new desk. Also, I wasn't allowed to do sales anymore. In fact, I wasn't allowed to do anything at all, period. They had hired a bunch of new people to the company, and they treated me like a pariah. Turns out Idiot Boss had gone to them, telling a pack of lies, and if they know what's good for them, they'll stay away. Since I had nothing to do but couldn't just sit there looking like a dope, I worked on documenting everything being done to me per my lawyer's advice. I was meticulous in my note-taking. Idiot Boss began writing me up. Stupid stuff like not answering my phone on the first ring, and for asking questions during company-wide meetings, asking to see my personnel file, which employees are legally entitled to do, although not entitled to photocopy any of it. Each time she wrote me up, I had to sign the write-up. There was a space for me to reply to it, so I consistently wrote, "I do not agree with this assessment." It infuriated her so much she wrote me up again for writing the statement that I didn't agree with it. There were several instances where she called me into her office and literally began screaming at me loudly and enthusiastically. I wouldn't engage, though. My standard answer to everything was okay, which made her apoplectic. At one point, she was inches from my face, screaming, her face beet red, and I just sat there with a dreamy expression, envisioning her blowing a vein in her head and stroking out. I infuriated her with my equanimity. Still and all, I was in it to win it at this point. It didn't matter what new humiliation they dished out. I took it all with a bland face, then went to my desk and documented it in my notebook. She loathed my notebook, sure that I was doing exactly what I was doing, documenting. Because it was my personal property, though, she couldn't take it from me. I had to carry all my belongings with me everywhere. Company-wide meetings, the bathroom, lunch. Because I caught her one time going through my desk drawer. In my purse, although it gave me great joy to write a note reading "Duck You," which I left in my backpack and jerry-rigged it so I could tell if she went into it, which she did. I withstood it all with a brave face, only breaking down once I left for the day. My attorney took a lot of sobbing phone calls during this period. Finally, the day comes that my attorney has what he needs and I can resign. Better still, he advises I don't have to give a 2-week notice. I come back from lunch and type up my letter with one sentence. I resign immediately. I take it into the HR guy, who also took part in their evil machinations, and hand it to him. His mouth forms an O shape, and he half stands up from his chair as he reads it. He looks up, and I give him a smile and say bye-bye just as sweet as pie, walked out the door, and drove home feeling mighty fine. 1 month later, my lawyer and I are at the EEOC office along with the CEO, idiot boss, and their lawyer so the EEOC can review my claim. In my state, you can't just bring a lawsuit against a company for things like harassment and retaliation. Claims must first be evaluated by the EEOC, and then if they determine you have enough grounds to file a lawsuit, they issue a right to sue document. My lawyer presented my case logically and forthright, detailing all the evidence. It took him 40 minutes to go through it all. Then they presented their side with allegations of my poor employment, along with their evidence, which were all the copious write-ups Idiot Boss had written. The EEOC asked about the timeline of the write-ups, inquiring if they were before or after my claim occurred. Idiot Boss, wearing a smug, self-satisfied smile, stated they were all prior to my claim as noted by the dates on each document. The EEOC lady looks at my lawyer looks at me. I look at Idiot Boss, then serenely pull out my photocopies of the documents. While handing them to the EEOC lady, Idiot Boss barks, "She's not supposed to have those, they're company property." I show the EEOC lady that the dates have clearly been altered by Idiot Boss. She had made copies with the dates blanked out, then backdated them. You see, whenever she wrote me up, I had to take the document personally to the CEO to put in my personnel file. Along the way, though, I stopped at the copier and took copies. She never knew I was doing this. You could have heard a pin drop. EEOC lady reviews the copies, then slowly sets them on the table. She didn't say a thing for a long time, then she spoke. I can remember her words exactly to this day. "I've seen a lot of ill treatment and illegal undertakings by both employees and employers, including forged or altered documents, but I have never seen someone so incredibly stupid to present documents this easily disproved. Not only are employees entitled to receive and keep a copy of formal write-ups, but reading these ridiculous allegations, it's obvious you are trying to manufacture your case." She went on to say I had a clear case for a lawsuit, and moreover, I would win it. She recommended their side go in another room and determine a settlement amount to pay me immediately or risk the lawsuit. They went to a nearby office and I could hear the lawyer dressing them down. Words I heard included, lied to me, lied to EEOC, presenting false documents, broke so many laws, figure out a number big enough to pay her so this doesn't go to court because you will lose. They came back with a $50,000 offer, which we accepted. My lawyer and I left, then did a touchdown dance in the parking lot. Looking up at the EEOC window, I could see Idiot Boss in the window looking miserable and crying. She had just been fired. That was my year one revenge. I'm not a hateful person. I get mad and get over it. But, for Idiot Boss, I nurtured hatred and vowed to one day get revenge, So I kept tabs on her and discovered she opened a finance marketing company after she was fired. Then I waited a year before exacting my petty delight. For the past 18 years, I've executed a wonderful, soul-refreshing project. Each year I go to her website and write down all the work email addresses and phone numbers for the employees. Then I subscribe them all to get more information from places like online schools, online insurance companies, all those aggressive organizations that keep your contact information longer than a gypsy curse while trying to sell you stuff. The last few years, I've subscribed them to an email bomb service where the service takes the address and instantly subscribes it to thousands of newsletters, requests for more information feeds, and other online buyers of email addresses for marketing services. I tested it with a burner email, and it wreaks havoc on your inbox with thousands of emails received within seconds, and they never stop. You literally have to close down the email because it can't be salvaged. Each year when I go to collect the contact information, all the emails have been changed to new ones. Last year, my cousin took a job in the same building. I enlisted her help, and she made it a point to befriend a receptionist working for Idiot Boss. After executing my yearly plan, my cousin went to lunch with her. The receptionist was in a foul mood and explained the entire organization was in disarray because IT had to redo all the emails again. It keeps happening over and over and nobody can figure out why. She said the owner, Idiot Boss, has had to get her cell phone number replaced 3 times because of all the texts and phone calls she gets whenever it happens again. Sometimes, Idiot Boss would have her phone number on the website, which I duly subscribed to everything under the sun. The best part for me was hearing how she lost a mega client because they felt the company was in too much turmoil so often. The thought of this keeps me warm and cozy at night, and I sleep so very, very well. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.